Welcome back, fight fans. It appears that Jake Paul and Mike Tyson will happen after all, and the new date is scheduled for November 15th.
Time to time, just every bit.
But while many eagerly anticipate the fight, many think it's still a ridiculous bout between a nearly 60-year-old man and a fighter in his prime. But can Mike Tyson upset Jake Paul, or will the younger generation prevail? Let's take a look. Jake Paul, a famous YouTuber and now professional boxer, is often mocked for his background in social media. Despite this, he has worked his way up in the boxing world and now boasts a record of 9 wins and 1 loss, with his only defeat coming from Tommy Fury, the brother of heavyweight champion Tyson Fury. Next on Jake Paul's list of opponents is the legendary Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson, known for becoming the youngest heavyweight champion in history, is a legendary figure famous for his powerful punches and charismatic personality. Even though he's coming out of retirement at the age of 57, Tyson remains a formidable force in boxing. Many criticize Jake Paul for choosing easier opponents, and some see his upcoming fight with an older Tyson as just another easy win. However, underestimating Tyson, who was a knockout artist in the 1990s, could be a mistake. Tyson might be the one to silence Paul's critics and teach him a lesson in the ring. Whether Tyson can defeat Paul is still uncertain. Fans are eagerly anticipating the showdown, but not all fans are waiting for this fight with excitement. They are worried about Tyson and his old age and his recent medical emergency at the airport, which led the fight to be postponed to November. In contrast, Jake Paul is in his prime years while Mike Tyson is nearly 60. It's nowhere near a fair deal, but nonetheless, that's still Mike Tyson. It's still uncertain why the committee allowed for this fight to happen as a sanctioned fight. As we wait for the fight, it's important to remember Tyson's tough upbringing and his remarkable boxing journey. After officially retiring in 2005 following a loss to Kevin McBride, Tyson explored various ventures. He starred in the movie The Hangover in 2008, built centers for underprivileged children, and co-founded a boxing promotion company in 2013. Initially, Tyson spoke negatively about his boxing career, feeling it was meaningless, and focused on his children's happiness instead. However, by the mid-2010s, Tyson's attitude began to change. He regained his physical fitness and started to resemble his former self. In a surprising turn of events, Tyson announced his return to the ring in 2020 at the age of 54 to face fellow sports legend Roy Jones Jr. In preparation for his much-anticipated comeback, Mike Tyson met young YouTube star Jake Paul for the first time. At that point, Paul was just beginning his boxing career and had only fought once against another internet personality. His interest in boxing started by following his older brother Logan, who was a pioneer in the YouTube boxing scene. Despite the challenges posed by the pandemic, Paul managed to find an opponent in famous basketball player Nate Robinson for a match scheduled alongside Tyson's bout against Roy Jones Jr. This unexpected connection brought Paul into Tyson's circle. In the ring, Paul demonstrated his seriousness about boxing. Nate Robinson rushed in, but Paul countered with a punch that knocked him down. Though Robinson got back up, Paul knocked him out in the second round with a powerful hook. Meanwhile, on the other main card, 2 veteran champions, Mike Tyson and Roy Jones Jr., faced off. Tyson focused on body shots while Jones tried to keep his distance. The fight lasted all 8 rounds and ended in a draw, although it seemed like Tyson had the edge. Both fighters were happy to go the distance, and fans enjoyed seeing the champions back in action, though it seemed like a one-time event for Tyson and Jones. For Jake Paul, however, this was just the beginning. He continued his boxing journey with more fights and achievements ahead, starting with his bout against UFC fighter Ben Askren in 2021. In that fight, Paul quickly knocked out the MMA veteran, boosting his confidence significantly and making him feel invincible for a while. The victory marked a high point in Paul's early boxing career, even though he wasn't in the mood for interviews afterwards. After enjoying his victory over Ben Askren, Jake Paul chose his next opponent, Tyron Woodley, a former UFC fighter who was once a feared welterweight champion. This fight proved to be more challenging. Woodley was resilient, defending well and occasionally landing punches. Jake, aiming to box more strategically, jabbed, retreated, and targeted Woodley's body. Jake started strong and controlled the early rounds against Woodley. However, as the fight progressed, Jake's stamina began to wane and Woodley started to catch up. If the fight had gone a few more rounds, Woodley might have won. But in the 8 rounds they fought, Jake did enough to stay undefeated by the judge's decision. Jake acknowledged that Woodley landed some good shots, but he felt confident in his victory, especially after lasting all 8 rounds. Aiming for tougher opponents, Jake set his sights on Tommy Fury, the brother of heavyweight champion Tyson Fury. However, their fight didn't happen right away. But Jake was prepared and countered effectively, keeping the fight on his terms. Then, in the 6th round, Jake landed a devastating right hook that knocked Woodley out cold. Meanwhile, Mike Tyson stayed busy with his podcast, handling scuffles with overzealous fans and enjoying marijuana. During one podcast, Tyson mentioned that he wouldn't mind stepping into the ring with the Paul brothers if the paycheck was big enough, recognizing the massive audience they attract and seeing it as a lucrative opportunity. Jake Paul's profile continued to rise with each win. He expressed interest in fighting big names like Nate Diaz and Jorge Masvidal, but those fights didn't materialize for various reasons. Instead, Paul agreed to face Anderson Silva, another UFC legend who was returning to boxing. Silva had already won a decision against Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., so he wasn't a complete amateur in boxing. Nevertheless, Paul dominated their fight, overwhelming Silva with his size and energy. He even managed to knock Silva down, securing a decisive victory. Tyson was once again asked about fighting Jake Paul, and he repeated his earlier thoughts, indicating that he was open to the idea if the circumstances were right. During this time, Jake Paul, who had built an impressive record of 6 wins and no losses, was not interested in fighting Mike Tyson despite Tyson's challenges. Paul's popularity had soared, and many fighters wanted a chance to face him, especially because of his reputation for knocking out MMA veterans. Among the many offers, the most exciting came from Tommy Fury's team. In late 2022, it was announced that Paul had agreed to fight Tommy Fury, with the match scheduled for February 26th. The bout would decide who was the stronger boxer: Fury, with his rich boxing pedigree and famous family, or Paul, the self-taught fighter known for his explosive punches. The loss. Paul acknowledged Fury's skill and admitted that his own performance had fallen short. Experiencing his first loss was a tough mental challenge for Paul, but he bounced back within a few months, ready to continue his journey in the boxing world. In the spring, Jake Paul made a triumphant comeback and announced his next opponent, Nate Diaz, a fighter Paul had been eager to face since Diaz left the UFC. Jake was thrilled about this unexpected turn of events. In their bout, Diaz, known for his resilience, took many hits early on and barely landed any punches himself, looking more like a punching bag. Towards the end of the fight, Diaz picked up the pace, throwing more jabs and engaging in clinches. However, he didn't pose much of a threat overall, and Jake secured the victory without much difficulty. Reflecting on the fight with Nate Diaz, Jake mentioned that he was patient and strategic, aiming to avoid tiring out and giving Diaz the chance to come back strong. He waited for the perfect moment to finish the fight, and although Diaz took some heavy punches, he managed to endure. After this fight, Jake appeared on Mike Tyson's podcast to discuss his future plans. He expressed interest in a rematch with Tommy Fury, but wasn't considering Tyson as an opponent at that time. Unfortunately, the rematch with Tommy Fury didn't materialize because Tommy had other commitments. Missing out on a lucrative rematch with Fury, Jake Paul shifted his focus to facing lesser-known professional boxers. Despite their decent records, Paul defeated them with ease, showcasing his dominance in the ring. He even boldly declared himself the face of boxing, which some found amusing. In his most recent fight on March 2nd, Paul once again emerged victorious. But before anyone could catch their breath, he announced his next bout, a showdown with none other than Mike Tyson himself. This news sent shockwaves through the boxing world. Scheduled for November 15th, the fight between Paul and Tyson was hyped from the start. Tyson showcased his remarkable shape and speed in training videos, issuing warnings to Paul, while Paul responded by creating parody clips of Tyson's infamous interviews, adding to the anticipation. While Tyson may be older and past his prime, his dedication to training and serious demeanor suggests he still has the skills to back up his talk. Whether the legend can defeat the outspoken Paul remains to be seen. But the prospect of the showdown has fans eagerly awaiting the summer. As always, please subscribe and don't forget to hit the like button.